So we've gotten these buildings and we've already applied the calculation to them, but now I want to show you how I get buildings in areas where they're not provided by the client. So if you have to get your own building data, it's fairly simple process, and you can use this process pretty much anywhere in any city around the world. But you need a plugin called the OpenStreetMap Downloader, and this is what it looks like. It's really hard to find because it's almost clear, but if you go to the plugin list and you click Manage and Install Plugins, you're going to want to make sure and install it before you try to find it. So go to All and search OSM Downloader, and you'll see that it's right here, and of course you'll be able to install it down here. Now if you can't find it on your map, maybe turn it on and off a few times and maybe you'll see where it goes, because it is really hard to see. But if you click it, well actually before we do that, we also need an additional group. So if I right click this area down here below, I can add a group and I'll call it OSM, meaning OpenStreetMap, or I can call it OSM Download. And that way I'll know what group I'm going to be downloading my data into. And then I can click it and I can draw a rectangle around my project area and check here and save the file to, one moment, we have to go back to our tutorials, and we can save the file to here. We'll just call it OSM file so that we remember what it looks like when we save it, and then click OK. And now it's going on to the OSM server and it's downloading the data. Don't worry about this. The data is just going to be in lat long, which is which is 4326 source or EPSG code, and our project projection is 2223. So this is just the on-the-fly transformation so you can view the map. And now what we'll do is what I'm going to do is I'm going to use this collapse all button here and then just open these guys now and turn off this. Let me just turn everything off. So this is the OpenStreetMap layer, and what we've done is we have broken it up into vectors. So these are line vectors that represent the streets, and these are, well, I'm not sure what these are, to be honest with you. So I'll just leave those alone. Maybe if you zoomed in a bit they would come up, but I'm not sure what they are. So we'll just turn them off. And then these are the polygons that represent all of the polygons in the OpenStreetMap layer. And these are the ones that we want, but we can't use them in their current format because not only are they in the wrong projection, but there's just too much data here. So what I will do is I will right click and export and save features as, and we'll call this OSM Polygon Layer, or we could call it OSM Buildings. But we don't want to keep it in this coordinate system. We want to change it to our coordinate system. So when I save it, I can choose the coordinate system to project it into. And also may not want all of these fields because it'll make it a little bit harder to find our buildings. So we can take some of these fields off. Military, I don't know that we need that. Historic, craft, I honestly don't know that we need all of these fields, so we can just take some of them off, and there. And then now when we export it, it'll export with a lot less data. And then I click OK, and now this has been added to our map. But as you can see, it's still not just buildings. Okay, now I want to move this back into our external layers, and I want to uncheck our OSM downloader. We're actually done with it, but I'll leave it on just in case something goes wrong with our building layer. Then this layer I want to, let's see, we need to check that back on. This layer I want to open the attribute table, and then I want to sort everything by building, And anything that's null is not a building. I think. Well, it says residential, so let me zoom to that layer and see what that is. No, that's definitely, that's a neighborhood, not a building. Okay, so what we'll do is we will select by clicking this area right here, anything that is a non-building. Okay, and then select that. Now if we look at the map, we should see that we have lots of polygons selected and none of them are buildings. Oh, where'd my table go? Did it get stuck down there? Oh, I hope not. Oh, it's just underneath it. Okay, good. And then we click Edit, and then we click Delete. And when I close this down a little bit more, you'll see that we now have just the buildings. And these should be pretty accurate. But what we need to do now is we need to select the buildings that are inside our computational domain. So to do that, it's very simple. We want to go to this layer and we want to select by location, and our location will be this other shape, okay, this other polygon. So select by location, and we want buildings that intersect or are within our, let's see, do we want buildings that intersect? Let's just try are within. Let's see what happens when we do a couple of these. So this will be are within the C, computational domain. So I just hit the C key. And then we will click run and see what that selects. Okay, so that selected all buildings that intersected. Okay, so let's just do this. Let's unselect all. And now let's uncheck that one and see what it does. It looks like this time it left the other buildings off. Okay, so that's interesting. So we don't necessarily want that. I don't think I want, let's see, yeah, that would be anything that crosses the building is left out. Okay, that's perfect. So yes, we want intersect and let's see. No, actually we just want are within. Yep, we just want are within. And the reason why is because we are now going to invert our selection by clicking this button. And now the buildings that cross our selection or that cross our computational domain are selected in addition to all the buildings outside of our domain. And we want to delete those. Except maybe we'll keep a couple, like I'm going to control click this one and we'll sort it out later. And the rest we'll delete. Because we don't want buildings along our boundary, because remember, boundaries are outside your area of interest, so you don't want a conflict along your boundary. So I typically delete anything along or on my boundary that's not an outflow node or an inflow node. So let's go ahead with the delete. So that would be using this delete button. And if you looked at your attribute table, you can now do a count of all your buildings, and you see that we have 3,000 buildings in our project area. But not all of these buildings are buildings that we want, because some of them are carports. So let's go down and find anything that's a carport. Okay, there we go. Here's our carports. And now we'll select this line 365 is what a carport. If I go down to the bottom of the carports, I can then shift select the last one so that I select all of them and delete carports. There may be, and you may want to just scan through here and see if there's another thing that you may want to remove, but this should remove all things like you don't want any gas islands or carports or anything that water will be just able to simply flow right through. We don't want any of that. And those rooftops are typically small enough that they're not important anyway. And then I don't know, these buildings say yes. I don't know if they're just shops or what. Okay, so that's done. We'll save this. But we need, remember, we need to add those 3 fields. So if I click delete field, I can take a few more of these fields away that we really don't need. And then we can add the 3 fields that we do need. That is collapse, and that can be an integer. And then there's arf, and that is also an integer. And finally we have werf, and that is also an integer. And then we can fill out these fields very simply by choosing the field in our editor box, setting the value equal to 0, and clicking update all. I'll do the same thing for arf, except of course it's going to 1, and finally werf going to 0. And now this is ready to use as our building. But you may find it when you're working on buildings, you may find that they're not always catching everything. New construction and things like that might be left out. So before we close our turn our editor off, we will close it and we will turn our Google satellite image back on. And the Google satellite image is typically a little bit more up to date than the building satellites. So I was kind of hoping that we could maybe find a few buildings. Yeah, see, all these carports got taken out. And I was kind of hoping maybe we could find a building that was needed to be edited. Okay, we definitely want to edit this one. And so we're still on the editing mode. As you can see, our pencil is still on. And we just want to take off some of these vertices right here. I just selected those vertices and I'll delete them, and I just keep it a little bit away from the edge of the boundary of the project. I was looking for a building, hoping, oh, here's some that are missing. Okay, so if you want to add a building, you'll click the Add a Polygon tool, and then you can just click the corners of the building. And then right click. Don't bother filling this out, that'll be the last thing that you do. And so you can quickly put in these missing buildings. Now there's actually a faster way of doing this, and that is to use, if I right click this area, I can find a panel called the Shape Digitizing Toolbar, and I can choose a shape called Rectangle from 3 points and distance. So, or rectangle from extent is also good. Let's try that one. So rectangle from extent is like that. And then it's a right click. So that's really fast. That's a left click and a right click. And you can do that very quickly. And then if you're building, let's do this one too. So that's a left click and a right click, enter. Then if your building is not aligned with the rectangle, you can do a rectangle from 3 points and distance. That's rectangle from 3 points and distance. And this one is also pretty easy. It's just left click, right click. And we can do that again with a left click, right click. Let's see if we can find another one that's a little bit more oddly shaped that might require a different style of polygon. Okay, so this one would be using back to this tool, but this one would be digitize with segment. Back to, sorry, we need to be on this one, but this needs to go to digitize with segment. And this will be like left clicks all the way around the building. And then I'm not going to leave that open, just going to right click, and we can do this one. And these are left clicks, and then a right click to close the polygon. Don't know. Looks like this building has changed. Looks like these are containers perhaps, not buildings. So I was looking for a few more that might be, just needing some extra work on them. So the way to do this might be to choose like a block, choose like a city block. Oh, and here's some more that are kind of oddly shaped polygons. Now, would I try to outline this perfectly? I don't think so. I think that would be maybe a waste of your time. So just on this one, you just go like this. And then I'm just gonna, guess I can take that one straight up and we'll just cover the boundary since it crosses the boundary. And then you right click. Let me move this up here. And then we can do this one too. So this one is just like this. We'll just go all the way to the edge of the grid. And then right click. And then there's one more here. That's kind of just, this whole area is just right along the boundary of the project. That's not exactly what we want. We just kind of want to stay away from our boundary, but since this one covers the boundary, probably not going to do much about that. Okay, and that is how you would take care of buildings that are missing from your layers, and they're typically newer buildings. Okay, now I can save my edits. Oh, actually, I'm sorry, I forgot to do one thing. So I'm going to right click and open the attribute one more time so that I can fill in these missing the missing data. And it's pretty simple. You'll just be doing collapse. Do this one a little differently. We'll say update all. Ooh. And then since that's also a 0, and then we'll put this to arf and update all, and then save, close. And now this layer is ready to process using your grid tools. But since we already processed it, let's just leave it as is, and we can now export the data and review the arf.dat file. So I already turned the arf switch on here. Now we want to export, but this time we're going to only export the arf data. So that will be arf-worf or reduction factors. So we're calling them area reduction factors, width reduction factors, or I might call them arf data or arf-worf data, or I might just call them buildings. I use those words basically almost interchangeably. Okay, now we have, let's see, now we have this, and we can open this in Notepad++. Why don't we close our storm drain data, and actually let's grab this too. So now we have, let's see, channels, arf-worf or buildings, rainfall, infiltration, storm drain, and hydraulic structures. And here we have a line of data that's a global reduction. So if you put this to like 0.5, it would change all these T lines from 100% blocked to 50% blocked. And then the T lines mean that that cell is completely blocked. And the you can see here, these are the lines that are partially blocked. And this is the partially blocked value. And this is width reduction factors, which we're not using. And one final thing about these is that, I mean, I don't know, if it's like less than 0.1, I might not even keep it. But you could take those and remove them. And then if they're greater than 0.95 or something, again, I might just eliminate them from the file itself. Or actually, sorry, convert that to a totally blocked line. But the model will also do that for you, so you don't actually have to do that. If the model finds a cell that has only like 5% left, it may block it completely for you. When flowpro.exe runs, it will do that. So that's it for buildings. We will move on to walls, and then at the end of walls, we'll look at the run, and we'll see the files that show you where the area and width reduction factors were modified. So I'm going to finish this video, and then we'll move on to creating walls.